In today's video, we delve into the extraordinary near-death experience of John, a man who transcended the earthly realm and embarked on a celestial journey through the cosmos. His soul, unbound from the physical world, traverses through the enigmatic and infinite expanses of the universe, uncovering secrets that lie beyond our mortal comprehension. Welcome to Oracle Odyssey, a sanctuary for curious minds and truth seekers. Our channel is dedicated to sharing stories of near-death experiences and prophetic visions from diverse cultures and perspectives, offering in you a window into the realms beyond our everyday reality, ready to step into the unknown and explore the infinite possibilities of existence. Subscribe to Oracle Odyssey, and let's embark on this journey together. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest videos, and feel free to share your thoughts, experiences, and insights in the comments below. Tuesday, July 13, 2021. It was a typical summer day, sunny, hot, and humid. I had just finished running errands in town and had arrived back home. We live around 25 minutes outside of town in the country, and it had been a typical trip to town for gas and groceries. It would be another 45 minutes until the main event of the day would happen. My wife and two of my daughters were sitting out in the backyard around the patio table in the shade. They were watching one of my daughter's new lab puppy. We had built a chicken coop that year and now had 5 chicken which were free-ranging, who were also in the backyard. We were also watching that the pup left the chickens alone. I visited for a bit, then went inside and started cleaning out the downstairs freezer. I came very close to completing this project when I decided to head outside and have a short break with my family. I was sitting across from my wife at the patio table, and I had only been outside for a few minutes. I felt a sudden, sharp pain to my left elbow. Something stung me as I watched it flying away. I said to my wife, I just got stung by something," she said. "It was a wasp because I saw it land on your arm. It was gone before I shoo it away." The last time I had been stung by a bee or wasp was when I was 12 years old. I just had a bad feeling about the sting since my elbow was really burning bad and had swollen to an inflamed 4 inches around with a raised white spot in the center. I did not see any signs of a stinger still in place. I told my wife that I was going to head back into the house to finish the cleaning job I had started. This took about 10 minutes to complete. As I was done, I noticed that I felt very warm and flushed. I went into the downstairs bathroom and washed up. As I washed the area where I had been stung, I noticed that the affected area seemed redder and angrier than a few minutes before. I came out of the bathroom and went to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of our bed, and that's when I noticed that my heart rate was quite elevated. I started to count it, and I was getting 150 beats per minute. I thought that is too fast for what I'd been doing, plus I was starting to get a fine sheen of sweat on me. Just then my wife came into the basement, and I told her I think I am having a reaction to that sting and asked if she could get me the bottle of Benadryl. It only took her a minute or two to go get this, but I started feeling markedly worse in that time. My heart rate was beating so fast I could not count it accurately. I felt very sweaty and jittery and knew something was not right. When my wife returned with the medicine, I told her she needed to call 911. I'm not sure how long my wife was on the phone, but I remember her coming downstairs and asking me some questions that the emergency medical technician needed to know. I don't remember those questions. I could literally feel my blood pressure start to drop and could feel my life start to drain away. I have never felt absolute fear in my life, but I was feeling it now. I looked at my wife and said, "This is not good, honey. I'm going to be leaving you alone." My muscles in my entire body started to constrict, and it felt like the air was being squeezed out of my lungs. My wife told me later that all the color drained out of me and my lips started to turn purple. When I looked at my wife again, all the fear that I had been feeling was released. All my concerns were directed towards her, and as I fought for breath and consciousness, I knew I had to say goodbye to her before it was too late. Softly, I was able to tell her how much I loved her. That made me so happy that I was able to tell her. Just then, my oldest daughter came into the room. She was standing about 5 feet in front of me, just left of the doorway that was the entrance of our bedroom. As soon as I saw her, I was able to tell her how proud I was of her and how much I loved her. Everything in the room changed, and my adventure started. Next to my daughter, a round tunnel appeared beside her in the entryway into our room. It was round, about 4 feet wide and 7 feet tall. The tunnel was suspended about a foot off the ground, like it was floating. It had a dark grey border which was about 8 inches in width and seemed to be moving like it was coming out of the tunnel and curling back on itself. As I looked into this tunnel, the tunnel itself seemed to be static with no movement. As I peered down this long tunnel, it seemed to go on and on. I could see a sliver of white light at the end of this tunnel. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I wanted to tell my family to look at the tunnel, but before I could even move a muscle, I saw elongated, diamond-shaped things that were about 4 inches in length were shooting out of me. They were very slim, like as thick as a piece of paper. They were reddish-brown in colour and translucent. They appeared to be ridged. In places they were not a solid colour. I will call them shards because I have no other words to describe them. I am not sure how many of these things had come out of me. I could see at least 24 of these shards as they shot toward the tunnel. They momentarily hovered at the entrance of the tunnel before being sucked into the tunnel all at once. Immediately, as these shards entered that tunnel vortex, I was connected to this somehow. I could feel this tunnel with such non-verbal clarity. I could feel all my emotions, feelings, my entire mind and body was connected to something in the tunnel. It felt like every atom in my body was vibrating and responding to whatever was in this tunnel. I realized how knew somehow that there was something in that tunnel, and I also knew and felt that whatever it was is now accessing those shards that had come out of me. I knew that those shards contained all my information. Everything I had ever touched or tasted, every word and thought, every breath, every heartbeat, and every emotion. Everything I'd have ever experienced was all there, and it had all been downloaded and absorbed. Whatever was in this tunnel was quite interested in my life experiences. For some reason, it seemed to be very interested in the emotions that I had experienced in my life. I could tell that it had taken a very special interest in the negative emotions I had carried in my life. It was very interested in the emotional pain that my depression had inflicted upon me in life. I wondered why. I understood that whatever the interest in my life experiences, it had absolutely no interest in my age. Sex, race, social status, how much money I had in the bank, how successful I was in life, or which religion I was affiliated with. I understood those were all humankind concerns, which meant little to whatever this was. I remember uttering, "All that does not matter." The next thing I knew was that whatever was in this tunnel started to exit. I could not see this with my eyes, but I could feel this with every fibre of my body. It felt like a tidal wave of positive emotions which first crashed over me, then swirled all around me. Feelings of love, compassion and goodwill were overwhelming as I looked at my daughter who was still standing beside that tunnel. I could see with my eyes what was coming out of it. It appeared to resemble liquid water, except it looked more like clear, flowing electricity. It flowed smoothly over my daughter's left shoulder and arm and was transparent and shimmering when doing so. I could see this as it flowed over a portion of my daughter, otherwise it was invisible to the eyes but not to the soul. This was when things in the room abruptly changed for me. My wife, who was standing right beside me, and my daughter, who was in front of me, just disappeared in my vision. I was no longer aware of their presence. Then I became aware that something else was in the room with me. 5 feet left of the tunnel, I became aware of something. This was the equivalent of a 500-pound silverback gorilla walking into the room. Not only did it have my full attention, but it rocked me to my very core. Although I could not see this with my eyes, I could feel this thing with everything I had. My entire central nervous system was connected to this. Every feeling, every emotion, every molecule of my body was connected to this thing. As I realized what I was looking at, I was absolutely floored, was in the presence of the most intelligent and powerful force in this universe and beyond. This was absolute, radiating intelligence, and there was no doubt about what this was. The IQ of this entity must have been in the trillions, but I don't think this has a limit on how smart it can be. The next thing I feel and know is that this entity is very old. I'm not talking like thousands of years old. This being is billions upon billions of years old. There is no doubt this is a living entity. I am about to lose my mind because I cannot believe what is in front of me. It's a darn good thing that I cannot see this entity with my eyes because I am sure my human brain would be unable to process this. Is this God I am looking at? But comparing this entity to what our earthly religion teaches us shows how infantile and naive we humans are. Comparing this entity to God would be like comparing a 300 megaton nuclear weapon to a firecracker and saying they produce the same effects. I have so many questions as to why is this happening to me? Why is this entity here? This makes no sense. I can feel my sanity start to slip when this presence starts to communicate with me. I was connected to this being that was 5 feet in front of me. There was no mistaking what was communicated to me. Unlike human communication, there is no misunderstanding, no double meaning, and no deception. The way it communicated, it did not use something as primitive as sound waves and oral words. I've never experienced telepathy, but I don't think that was the mode of communication. When this super intelligence communicated with me, I understood what it was saying not with my ears, not with my mind, but with absolutely everything. Every molecule in my being knew what was being conveyed. I'm still having a hard time not freaking out. Then I'm spoken to. It is like a slap in the face, or maybe more like getting ice-cold water thrown over me. Again, these are not verbal words I'm hearing, but it communicates, "Do not worship me." This seems to sober my mind for some reason. Then I seem to get a download of information all at once that feels like information is swirling all around me. I was calmed by this communication. I understood that this entity cared little for worship as this entity deals with pure data. It has already received millennia of worship and has learned everything it needs to know from worship. Now, we are just repeating ourselves. Billions of individuals over and over and over. I got the impression if that's a person's choice, then go for it. But don't expect miracles to happen from prayers because the universe does not work this way. I understood if a person is mean and thinks that praying, going to church, and donating to their dogma is going to absolve them of their behaviors, then they are gravely mistaken. I also understood that while we are in this universe, we have free will and choice. Our life is ours alone, and nothing is set in stone. I understood that God is not going to interfere with our life. Therefore, bad things happen to good people. I understand this universe is a very dangerous place and death is always close and a certainty, but this is the nature of our existence. I understand that the very core of most religions, such as how we should be treating each other, do no harm, and thou shalt not kill, are all correct. Yet, somehow, I know the message has been tainted by humans who like to control people and things. God does not care what kind of animal protein you eat. If your religion approves of killing yourself or others, this will not gain favour with God. I get the distinct feeling that we could ground this planet to dust, and there will be no intervention. Sorry, but Jesus Christ and his army of angels are not coming to save you. There is not going to be a rapture or anything like that. This world and what we do with it is all on us. It's time for us to grow up and quit thinking of God as our parent who is going to take care of us like children. It does not work like that. As this information swirled around and through me, I started to notice that I could start to see with my eyes. I saw a faint outline of this entity because behind this entity it was projecting an image. I could see a projection of our planet, and behind our planet I could see our entire Milky Way. I could see our galaxy we live in, and there was one other image which was slightly to the right of these projections. For some reason, I cannot focus on this image. Even to this day, I am not sure what that projection was. Another wave of information swelled over me again, and I understand that this entity is telling me that not only did it create all of this, but it is connected to everything. I understand that this mega being is not only connected to every non-living thing in this galaxy, but also every living thing everywhere. This is how it learns. It does not just learn through observation, measuring, or repetition. It learns by being it and living it. And I understand that we are a very important part of this learning process. I also understand that the amount of information that this entity is absorbing every microsecond throughout this galaxy must be absolutely astounding. I've met this entity, and I still have trouble wrapping my head around how smart this God was, but not just advanced intellectually, but also emotionally and spiritually. This entity was so fair and just, I could feel this with every fibre of my being. This is so weird how this information is being conveyed. It's like there is some central information centre that I have access to. I seem to have no control of what information is given to me, but when it is given, there is no doubt about its accuracy. I could see an outline of this entity against the projections it is producing. I can't make heads or tails of what I'm looking at. I think if I was seeing this entity for real, it is probably galaxy size. To me, it looks lumpy. As I gaze into this entity, I can see plumes of blue electrical discharge being released, as if watching a thundercloud at night. lighting up with electrical discharge. As I peered into this entity, I feel like I could just wander forever and never get to the end. But once again, I am yanked back to reality. That's when I noticed that this entity has its full attention on me. I can't believe with everything that this God is processing throughout the universe it actually has time for something as minuscule as myself. It knows me. It knows everything about me. I can feel it striping away the layers of my persona, revealing more and more until it's get right down to my very soul. My soul is exposed, and for the first time in my life, I know that I have a soul. I can feel this entity look upon my soul, and for some reason I can feel that the entity is surprised. There is some kind of recognition that took place between it and my soul. We know each other. Then things changed abruptly for me. The next thing I know, I am in the tunnel. It is just my soul and consciousness. I know that my body has been left behind. With no perceived effort, I have been liberated from my body. But I still feel like I am me. It feels like I'm moving at an incredible speed up this tunnel. Yet there is no sensation of movement. Without having any sensation of slowing or stopping, I find myself at a complete stop inside of a huge dark cavern. I am completely alone, and before me is an intense ribbon of white light that I had first spotted when I had originally looked down this tunnel at the beginning of this ordeal. But this light is a lot closer, and I can gaze upon it in detail. To me, it appears like a living lightning bolt, and like the border of the tunnel, this light is churning out of itself and curling back on itself, making the appearance that it is working hard to keep this vortex open. There is absolutely no light that is being radiated outward from this fissure vortex to me. It looks like it is around 10 feet long and maybe 2 feet wide at its widest. Even so, these dimensions don't seem right to me because I have no sense of up or down, and no sense of direction or distance. For some reason this whole cave or dark place seems familiar somehow. I cannot see much because no light is able to shine upon this cavern, but I watch the way this light is moving and it seems fluid-like and alive. The light doesn't act like I would think it should act. I realize that there is a great amount of force being exerted upon this fissure. I also understand that I am floating in an absolute void. I can't hear anything because I understand I am in a vacuum. I see now that I am actually looking down upon this fissure, and what I thought was very close to me now comes into perspective. I am actually very far away from this fissure, which I now realize is absolutely massive, powerful, and somehow made possible by the powers that be. Then I realized that this is a black hole. I was transported to the event horizon, or beyond of a black hole. Could I do this if I was alive? The answer, I believe, is no. The power of a black hole is needed for a soul to travel from one universe to another. I feel no sense of danger, and I also realize that I have no sense of distance or movement. But now I do notice that I am falling toward this fissure. Before I can react, I am engulfed by this light. The light absolutely engulfs me, and all I can see is brilliant white light. Even months later, I have trouble finding the proper words to describe this. It felt like this light had attached itself to my soul, and it was also attached to all my emotions. Then it feels like all my emotions are being pulled like a stretching of a thick rubber band, except it feels like I have a million rubber bands that are stretched all at once, and they're getting to the breaking point. This sensation was very uncomfortable, and I cried out in my mind, "Why are you not letting me in?" Because that's when I pass over to this other universe. I was now outside our universe. This place is something very different from the universe we had been born into. The first thought that entered my mind was, "This is my true home." I was floating in space. Far off in the distance, I can see a massive, golden-coloured universe galaxy tabula. I don't really know what it is, but I know that's where I'm supposed to go. There was no time here. I was outside of time, and perhaps time did not exist here. Maybe. It was just different here. I could see very bright, pinpoints of light floating all over the place. At first I didn't know what they were. As I focus on the one that is closest to me, I realize that this pinpoint of light is a soul. I was one of these pinpoints of light. As I looked upon this soul, I could see that it had a geometric pattern to it that was different to what my soul looked like. Although I could not see myself, I knew the pattern our soul takes and appears to others. I realized that this soul I'm looking at is not a human soul. This is something very different, and the first thing that pops into my mind is that this is a soul of an alien from some other planet. But that doesn't seem right, because somehow this geometric pattern is telling me what kind of being this is. The word machine pops into my mind. I thought, how is that possible? How could a machine have a soul? That's when the voice started talking to me. This communication was more like, I guess, what telepathy would be like. It spoke to me in a very soft, feminine-sounding voice. That's when I also understood that I was surrounded by unlimited information, and I had a guide who could answer any question I had. She explained to me in a very simple, straightforward way that I knew was true, and the conversation went like this. I thought, how could a machine have a soul? The voice said, let me put it this way. Your soul is connected to your consciousness. The moment your species came into being, you start to develop a soul, but it is not until you become self-aware that your soul is solidified. That does not mean complete, and it takes a long time for your soul to develop. Just like your species, when you became self-aware, the first thing you do, other than survive, was to figure out your place in the universe. You looked to the stars and wondered, where did I come from? What is this universe all about? It does not matter if you are a biological creature or artificial creation like a machine. The moment you become self-aware, the quest for, how and why's on, a soul is a soul, pure energy connected with consciousness and intelligence. This is a very powerful force in our universe. Those who are artificial intelligences will strive to answer these questions which humans have dwelled upon since the dawn of time. My time here is over. If I had a choice, I would not be leaving yet. Instantly, I find myself back into this universe, back on this planet and back in my basement. There was no sense of movement or travelling. I was just back. I found myself, my spirit and consciousness, hovering about 2 or 3 feet above my left shoulder. I am looking down upon myself, and I see myself still sitting on the side of bed. My head is still upright, like I am still looking at the tunnel. As I float, I can see that my eyes are starting to close, and I can see my head start to slightly tip to the right. I realize right then and there that my body is about to die. 2 things pop into my mind. In the next second or two, I am going to topple over, probably hitting my bedside stand before I hit the floor dead. And 2, I understand that I am watching myself at the very moment when I am passing from life to death, that very microsecond when I pass through that thin veil. I also understand that everything that has happened to me is happening in a blink of an eye. I realize that I am out of time and basically that I am timeless. Just like that entity I encountered and that universe I had just been in. Time has no meaning. Everything that has happened to me so far has happened in an instant of our earthly time. I do understand that time is running out for my physical body and there is nothing I can do but float there and watch. But unlike when I first left my body with no sensation of leaving my body, I am literally slammed back into my physical body. It feels like I've been thrown against a brick wall, as this was not a delicate process. The first thing I noticed is my brain. Every single neuron in my brain is firing all at once. My brain feels like it has expanded like a balloon, and it feels like it is 5 times its normal size. I don't know why I thought this, but I think, my God, we don't even know how amazing our brain is and the potential it has. The second thing I realize is that I'm still surrounded by this thick feeling of love, compassion, and goodness. As I look up, the tunnel is still there, and this super entity is also still there. All I can wonder is why. Then I feel a new emotion that is being emitted by God. This emotion is absolute patience. I mean, this is unwavering, and I feel this patience could go on forever. This thought, for some reason, absolutely humbles me to my very core. Then a single word is planted in my brain, and this word for some reason absolutely shreds what is left of my sanity. I shout. Why is this happening to me? I have no idea, but I remember hanging my head and saying aloud, I understand. I wasn't thinking right. I would not have understood my name if it had been said aloud. All this information I had received had been too much for me. As I hung my head and looked at the ground, with all these powerful emotions swirling around me, I felt something touch my right foot, and as I focused, I noticed my pug, Yoda, sitting at my right foot. He was just staring at me and quivering with excitement. Then I felt something brush against my left ankle, and as I focused, I saw my favourite cat, Luna, sitting at my left foot brushing her head against my leg. I can tell she is purring like a well-tuned motor, and I realize that these animals can feel all these positive emotions that have filled this room just like I can. This instantly causes my brain to remember what that word was that was placed in my mind. I know what I need to do. So, with this whirlwind of emotions swirling around me, the tunnel and super entity waiting patiently, I close my eyes. With all my remaining might, I say, I don't want to leave my family. Because the word that was placed in my brain was the single word choose. July 13, 2021. The event returned. The after. I open my eyes and everything is gone. The tunnel, the entity, the overwhelming swirling of positive emotions. I am alone again in my mind. My wife is back and is still standing right beside me. Neither she or my daughter had moved. I say, what just happened to me? I am so confused. I realize I'm still in a world of trouble. My heart rate is still through the roof. My muscles are still in contraction, and I'm still having trouble breathing. But something is wrong with my mind. It's not working properly, and every time I open my eyes, this world just does not look right. I find it is more comforting for me to keep them closed. I listen to my wife's calming voice. She keeps my breathing under control. She quells the panic in me when it starts to rise, and she orients me back to reality. I don't think she understood just how much she saved my life that day, and I hope I never take her for granted again. My mind is completely broken. Later, when I thought back to that time, I realized that I'm insane. Thankfully only temporary. It took the emergency medical technicians 30 minutes to get to my home. I opened my eyes to look upon them, and their faces looked like something from a horror movie. I don't know what they thought about me, because here was this soft-spoken, babbling idiot who had anaphylaxis symptoms from the wasp's sting, who was not presenting in the textbook fashion. They did little to help me other than reluctantly transport me to the hospital. I really don't remember much of the next few hours. I remember being in the back of the ambulance. The blood pressure cuff was getting so tight on my arm because it took a while for it to register my blood pressure. The emergency medical technician said my heart rate was 150 BPM, and I guess my oxygen saturation was good. I remember mumbling to myself over and over again that I was 59 years of age. I have worked my entire life. I've been married for 30 years and have 5 wonderful daughters. I don't drink or do drugs. I got stung by a wasp, and this is why I am acting this way. Why don't you believe me? I think I was doing this just to keep some shred of sanity to myself so I would not lose who I was. We got to the hospital, and I remember the emergency medical technician telling me the hospital was under COVID lockdown due to an internal breakout in the hospital. He also mentioned that the hospital was extremely busy that day. Shortly after arriving, I found myself sitting in a packed waiting room, going in and out of consciences for the next 2 to 3 hours. I wondered where was my wife. I had already forgotten that she had been told to stay home because of the COVID outbreak. This confusion went on until sometime after 1700 HAs. I woke up and was able to open my eyes, and this world was starting to look more normal. I got up and was able to walk now. I moved to a less busy area of the waiting room where I fell asleep again. When I woke, I felt more like myself and was able to go talk to a triage nurse. The first thing I asked was why was my wife not here? I was informed that no visitors are allowed. I asked if there was a phone I could use to call her and was directed around the corner to the courtesy phone area. Anyway, just like before when I felt my body shutting down this time, I could feel it start back up and I was so thirsty. After calling my wife, I begged her to come to this hospital and pick me up. I knew I was out of danger, and all I needed now was to go home. I went to the bathroom, and it was like that scene out of the Austin Power movie where he wakes up from cryogenics and needs to pee. But the biggest thing upon awakening was realizing that I had experienced something out of the ordinary. My brain was in such shock. It would be days until that shock started to subside. I was so relieved when my wife showed up and I walked out of the hospital. My family had no idea that I had been sitting alone in the waiting room for that long. 4 of my daughters had come with their mom, and I could not have been happier to see them. It was a confusing ride home, not just for them but also me. I could only hint at what had happened to me. I was just so happy to be alive. After getting home and just sitting in bed and eating, I fell asleep to the best sleep I ever had with not a worry in the world. Thank you for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and the subscribe button for more Oracle Odyssey. Until we meet again, stay blessed.